guys, we're back, and I'm excited. This is a series that we dreamed about. We talked about this in one of the earlier episodes. We dreamed about this series when we first started talking about the podcast, that maybe one day we could reach out to all the chiefs here in the Valley, and they would be willing to sit with us at the table. And we wondered back then if that would even happen. And we're blessed to have another episode where we're going to have one of those guys with us. We're going to hold you in suspense just for a minute because we're going to let him introduce himself here in just a second. But you guys ready for today?
I'm not just ready. Like I am. This particular episode I've been looking forward to for a while now. I think when everyone begins listening in, they're gonna know why I've been looking forward to this episode. But yeah, absolutely.
Big fan. I just meeting before, just a little snippet of what's to come. I think our hearts unite in a lot of things. So it's gonna be cool to kind of join together in those discussions.
Yeah.
Very excited.
Yep. Today's going to be a lot of fun. So without further ado, we're going to give him a chance to introduce himself, tell you a little bit about who he is, where he serves. So take it over, Chief.
Thank you. I appreciate the introduction. I thought for a second that somebody else was going to walk in and take my seat. That was pretty awesome. So I appreciate that. Yeah, my name is Fabricio Drumond. I'm currently the Chief of Police for the Vinton Police Department. I've been in the town of Vinton Police Department since 2009, and currently serving as the Chief of Police for the last 4 years there.
Very cool. Well, tell us a little bit more about who you are. Introduce us to you around the block, around your family, and maybe a little bit about just a little bit more about who you are.
Yeah, I was born in Brazil. I was born in a city called Belo Horizonte, Brazil, which is flight time would be like 40 minutes from Rio de Janeiro. So we're landlocked in Brazil, massive city, millions of people in the population, probably 11 million or so. Grew up just 20 minutes from that city. Very family-oriented street. So where we lived, it was all my dad's family. My uncles, my grandparents, cousins. Cool. Everybody just fell in line down the street. So I had access to everybody, right?
So in other words, this city was a lot like Vinton.
Yeah.
Everybody knows everybody. Lots of people like Vinton, you know?
Absolutely. And it was really cool growing up because you're around your cousins, you're around your friends. Everybody's a schoolmate. So it was really tight in Brazil. Family was everything. It still is here. However, everybody that that is my family, it still lives down there, and we'll get to that, of course. But grew up there, was in Brazil until I was 8 years old, up until second grade, and then my family moved to the United States. My dad originally moved to, he went to New Jersey to kind of explore the United States, right? Find out if this is good for his family. Yeah. And then came back and got us. And we moved to Miami, Florida first. Very short stint in Miami, Florida. If you know Miami, it's very cultural, a lot of Latinos. And I think he wanted more of the American vibe. So we moved to Massachusetts. And plus, you're in Brazil, so there's no snow, there's no cold weather. And I think he wanted exposure to that because we live in 90-degree heat all day long, every day of the year. So we moved to Massachusetts, kind of like drinking through a fire hose. We moved there, lived with his cousin in a small apartment. So it was my dad's cousin, his wife, 3 of his kids, along with me, my brother, my mom, and of course my dad, all in one apartment.
Wow.
And I tell awesome. The opposite. My first bedroom was my parents' walk-in closet because we're just packed in. We're packed in. Humble beginnings, to get started in a country that you don't know. In my case, my dad, my mom, nobody could speak English. We're here just on the beginning. And my dad got a job as a dishwasher at IHOP. My mom cleaned homes. And I was put immediately into school, American school. There wasn't really any programs like English as a second language. There wasn't the robust programs that we have today. So it was just, straight gas, straight into the American culture. Yeah.
I was going to say a lot of Portuguese speakers, right? Isn't it Portuguese?
Yes.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, but
that's...
I'm sure, I don't remember. I'm sure there might have been some other Brazilian classmates, but I don't remember any, so I'm going to go with no.
Yeah.
And I just remember not understanding anything. I didn't know how to read, write. I couldn't even count to 10. And obviously I had some really loving, patient, and passionate teachers to get me through this. Never failed, never stayed back. Don't know how I did it, but I did it, obviously, by the skin of my teeth, I assume, because I didn't really know what I was doing. I remember like short little things like learning how to write. And, the teachers say, the cat went up the tree, period. I would write the cat went up a tree and write period. I didn't know the period was the little dot. Obviously caught on. Fell in love really early with the American culture, American military, and that kind of, knowing now then is that kind of shaped my future. Is watching, this is 1989 when I came here, so Top Gun was the movie, and Rambo, and all these really cool action movies. And fell in love with that. I thought that's what America was. Just a lot of
Rambos running around.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to my time in Brazil, I used to run around with a little red bandana, no shirt, pretending I was Rambo. So from an early age, I think I always aspired to do something great. I just didn't know what that was at the time. Going back to my youth is really just my brother. I have an older brother, and he looked after me because my parents worked quite a bit, to make ends meet.
Sure.
So they would leave work early, and I wouldn't see them again until 9-10 p.m. So my mom would come in mid-afternoon, obviously, to take care of us, make lunch, and then she'd go back to evening work, which was cleaning offices. So much of my schooling was me and my brother and my parents just working really hard just to make it into the country. And getting through that, it was difficult, but it wasn't. I kind of really just started clicking in. I started getting into sports, fell in love with baseball and hockey very early, signed up for baseball, didn't know how to play the sport, didn't even know the rules of the game, just like the idea of it. So they do what anybody that doesn't know the sport, they just tell you can be a catcher.
Hey, that's what I played.
Yeah, man, just sit here. And catch this and throw it back to that
Dude's
guy.
obedience. So right here.
Yeah. And that's the position I stayed in until they figured out I could run fast and put me in the outfield. And then just run around, catch the ball, and throw it back.
Don't let the ball hit.
Yeah.
I progressed and started learning the sport. And same thing with hockey. I didn't know the rules of the game, so what did they do? Put you on the goal.
Yep.
And if you obviously this audio, I'm a pretty short guy, so I had to be quite talented to keep up with the game because I don't occupy a lot of space. So got really involved in sports. Got really involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. Where I fell apart really was my studies. It wasn't because I was a dummy. It was really I just didn't apply myself. Going back in times you wish you could go back and like shake yourself up and be like, pay attention, buddy. You'll pay for this in the end.
Yeah.
So got through school, went through high school, and fell in love with the DARE program. And what I mean by that was the messaging was great, but that was my first exposure into police work. A DARE officer from my city, Medford, Massachusetts, would come in, I think it was once a week, and talk to the class. And everlasting impact, right? We always talk about police officers and how you can leave these legacies behind. Well, that was his on me. He made a great impression, and I was kind of like, I want to be like that guy.
That's cool.
Have you met that guy since then?
I have not. I wish I could.
I wonder what that guy would say if you said, "Hey, my name is Chief Drumond."
Yeah, he'd probably be like, "I did that. Yeah. I had that much of an impact."
That's so cool.
Yeah,
you never know your impact.
Yep, and that small exposure, and then I developed this natural curiosity for law enforcement, and I knew two things: I wanted to either be a fighter pilot or a police officer, and instead, I joined the Marines instead. Always really attracted to the Marines. Right, earlier I told you I loved Rocky and loved all these action movies. So I was like, I want to go to Marines. I want to be a Marine.
Yep.
I want to go into the infantry. And, timing was perfect. And at the same time, it wasn't because of the state of the country. When I graduated high school was 2001. And we all know what happened in 2001 as far as the attacks here on our home soil. So I enlisted right when the country is full gas into a lot of a war. So went to Parris Island for Marine Corps boot camp, went to Camp Geiger, became a basic infantry guy. And then, of course, you go to your secondary school. In my case, I became an assaultman and got attached to a weapons company in the Fleet Marine Force. In the Fleet Marine Force, I was there maybe 30 days because within that time period of my training, the USS Cole had been attacked. If you remember, it was attacked in the Gulf of Aden, I think. And so they needed a security detachment of Marines to go to the USS Mount Whitney to offer protection to that ship so that wouldn't happen to them. So I deployed on the USS Mount Whitney, and we went to the Horn of Africa. And we essentially did crazy eights around the Gulf of Aden for 7 months. And we detached into Djibouti, into Somalia. But mostly we were there for ship protection in Mount Whitney. It was a great deployment. It was a very rude awakening to the Navy and how it takes to be a sailor and live and sleep in coffin racks. Very thankful I didn't join the Navy. Not that the Marine Corps were exceptionally good at showing me love, you know. I always say like the Marine Corps is like, they treat you well, but it's kind of like you're a bunch of dogs and they keep you in a cage and they rattle the cage just to get you going. And then when they need you to let you out and you'll do your thing and then they put you back in the cage. So they're very exceptional at creating that shock troop mentality.
It's the devil dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly. It's kind of like a pit bull chewing on a tire. You know, just go there and chew on that, and then come back here, and we'll put you back over here so you can relax for a little bit.
I can't wait to tell my father-in-law that metaphor. He did a stint in the Marines, and he went to the Army, but he's always been a Marine at heart, and I can't wait to tell him that metaphor when I see him tonight.
I don't know. Maybe it was like the exposure
That's
to
awesome.
my battalion. Maybe every battalion is different. I certainly know there's a difference between the infantry battalions and other MOSs in the military, specifically the Marine Corps. And, you know, the culture of your battalion depends on who's in charge of it. And we had some pretty good, we'll call them motivators, that were responsible for our care in the Marine Corps. I was extremely blessed to be in the Marine Corps. It really shaped me into who I am today. A lot of my habits and my disciplines are a result of me being in the Marine Corps. Really what it comes down to with the Marines were, you know, they strip everything down from you. You know, you don't have a refrigerator or a microwave. You don't have these luxuries that we call luxuries in life. Just the common things that we take for granted, right? Air conditioning, and you know, and you're absent of that quite a bit, especially for me going in during the global war on terrorism, where I was mainly deployed. So you learn to appreciate the little things in life, and that's really what it taught me. Is like, man, be thankful for the things you got.
Yeah.
Because sleeping on your Kevlar helmet is never comfortable, or 30 days without a shower is never a good thing. After a certain point, you start, you know, everybody smells good. So, you know, after you don't shower for a while.
Yeah. Elevated toilets. Like, you know, it's nice to have a seat.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, very thankful for the Marine Corps. Obviously, I got out. The reason why I really got out of the Marine Corps was I saw the stress that it was putting on my parents, you know, constantly deploying to Iraq, Afghanistan, and some other deployments several times. And it was I didn't really take into account the emotional toll it takes on others. While I'm having fun and doing everything I signed up for and just having a blast doing it with friends, my parents don't see it that way. They see what they're seeing on TV. And my last deployment, they froze my contract so I couldn't leave the Marine Corps so I could deploy one more time. And when I was waving to my dad, I remember him waving through the screen door, just, you know, heartbroken, his son's going again. And before I went on that deployment, he took me down to Brazil to see my family. What I didn't mention is only my immediate family's here, my mom and my brother. My dad retired, is now in Brazil, but he obviously lived here. Everybody else lives in Brazil. So he took me to Brazil to see my grandparents, my aunts, uncles, all my relatives, just in case something happened to me. And he never really told me that until later in life. I was like, well, I mean, I appreciate that you did that. So, you know, reflecting back and, of course, recognizing when my dad was waving at me, that's when I decided, I was like, I think I'll call it a career, because I had aspirations to keep going and be a drill instructor and maybe do something specialized. But my family was much more important. And I had some other ambitions in life as well. So I decided to get out. I got out of the Marine Corps. And what I told you before about schooling and pay attention, I really wanted to be a pilot. Thought I'd maybe be a commercial pilot, which I certainly could have achieved. So I put applications in to go to an airline academy in Florida. In between that, before you exit the military, they take you to career fairs. They make you go to career fairs and fill out interest cards. And Roanoke City Police Department was at that career fair. So I just pencil whipped a bunch of interest cards. You know, I remember Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Jacksonville, Roanoke was one of them, obviously, and never thought anything of it. Went home, got out of the Marine Corps, was engaged in conversation to go to the airline academy, and the recruiter for Roanoke City PD called me. He's like, "Hey, I'm following up with you. You had an interest card with Roanoke Police," and I was like, "I'll be honest with you, I don't even know where you guys are at." I was like, "I don't know if you know, but I'm in Massachusetts," and he's like, "I know where you're at, but you had that interest card." I was like, where are you located? Are you near like 95? Because I commute that from North Carolina to Massachusetts. And he's like, no, we're in the southwestern part of Virginia. I was like, well, that's cool. I really like the ocean though. I love the beach, love the weather. And he's like, no, we're near the mountains. I was like, well, I love snowboarding. That could be really cool. And he's like, well, it's not that kind of mountain, but you know, we don't have that kind of weather here, but there is access to it. I was like, oh, whatever, man. I'll come down and visit. I love new adventures. And came down to Roanoke, drove down here, 12-hour drive down to Roanoke, and And from a visitor standpoint, when you enter Roanoke, it's such a beautiful city.
Yep.
You know, it's a valley surrounded by mountains. And of course, you have that landscape and the star. I was like, man, this is a cool city. Went immediately into the academy, filled out my application, and they really took care of me. Roanoke City PD really took care of me.
I'm really curious. Who was that recruiter?
Daryl Rosser.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you know Daryl, you know that's not like a social butterfly or this awesome personality, but man, he's strong. He's a tough guy.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. He's been retired for some time now, and I still, you know, I wouldn't want to tangle with him. I saw him at a retirement luncheon not too long ago. I was like, man, this guy still looks great.
Oh yeah, we used to do DT with him, and he'd grab on you like vice grips. It was like his strength was incredible. I guess he knew I was in the Marines, so he knew I already fell for recruiting once, so he didn't have to sell me too hard. I'm pretty gullible to a sales pitch, and he told me about Roanoke City, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to be a part of it. Investigator Dave Lovell was my background investigator.
Sorry about that.
And Dave, did my background, even accommodated me because I was in Massachusetts, and try to like stack on all the things that I had to do instead of that 6-month process where I'm going back and forth. I think within 3 months, what was it, December of 2006, I was already in the police academy, and I think I'd applied like sometime in the late summer. So It was a really good process. I'm sure they're very thorough because I remember them asking me lots of questions. And yeah, kicked it off running in Roanoke City Police Academy, the old academy, downtown, a small academy. But I really love that setting in the academy. I mean, it definitely gave an opportunity for all the instructors to show me a lot of love. You know, a lot of love and attention.
Yeah, that's right.
I really appreciated that. I like that kind of environment. I strive for that intensity. So I liked what Roanoke City's product for the academy is, and I have no doubt that it's still the same today. But very long academy. I remember it was really long because the neighboring academies were all getting in and finishing early, and we're still going at it. So Roanoke had this prestigious, much longer academy, much bigger training. And then I hated it because I was in the academy longer, but really appreciative of all the material that we covered. And of course, they made me who I am today, and I'll never not appreciate that. Of course, graduated the academy, and the rule was that if you finished class president, you got to pick where you go. I don't know if that's still the rule for Roanoke City, but that was then.
Not so much.
Yeah.
I think that was the rule. So, you know, and you're nominated by your peers. I got class president probably not because I was the best in the academy. I'm probably the world's okayest guy at everything. I just have the ability to communicate and talk and have fun. So people are like, you're going to vote for the popular guy, right? So I got class president, which was really cool. Got to do the speech, and my dad could be proud of me because I always want to make my dad proud. And got to pick my zone in the city, and went to zone 4, which for me, really any part of the city would have been okay because I didn't know anything. I knew how to drive from my apartment to the academy, and that was it. So when I hit the road, I knew 2 roads, which was Orange and Williamson. Everything else was just, it was a beautiful disaster, I guess. You know, it was beautiful that I was learning, a disaster that I didn't know where I was going.
So zone 4, because there's some people that are listening that don't catch that. Zone 4 in the city is the Wild West. That is where it pops off. That is where a lot of violent crime is at. Most calls for service are over in that zone. So you picked one of the harder areas to go into.
Yeah. Following advice from senior officers, right? They visit the academy. You need to pick this zone. Okay, that one it is. And you go to that one. Thankful for it because of the call volume, because of you learn very quickly to get comfortable in your own skin. Make decisions, right, wrong, or indifferent. You're going to have to make one. And probably learn how to write a good report, even though it probably took me a good 5 years to write a good report. I always kind of fall on the crutch that English is my second language, so my grammar is poor. And if you know my wife, she'll confirm that with you. It's still pretty awful.
Well, mine is pretty bad, but English is my first language. So at least you have an excuse.
Yeah. You know, worked around a bunch of great officers. Taught me everything I know today. Still hold dear to my heart the relationships that I have with Roanoke City and my first exposure.
Who's your FTO?
I actually just ran into him. I went to Cardinal Academy before here, and he's in training right now. It's Kirk Hubbard is my first FTO.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And my secondary FTO is Mikey Thompson.
Okay.
Mikey Thompson.
Yeah.
Back before the Cujo days.
Yeah.
Before we had
Hubbard
Loki
and Thompson.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the problem with me is I would try to match someone like Mike's energy or Kirk's and try to be a police officer like them, and would fail miserably, right? Because them guys are studs.
Those are legends.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Those are my FTOs. And of course, I had a really good crew, and learn from the officers around me, the district officers, learn about district integrity and, taking ownership of your area. Not only that, but backing up your other officers. Just a lot of fast paced lessons learned in Roanoke City PD. For sure. And I was in Roanoke City till 2009. And that's when for me, I started learning about what's the end game for me, what's my retirement plan. Not that I'm even remotely close to retirement then, is just understanding the different retirements and what do I want out of my career and what kind of exposure do I want? How do I want to leave this legacy, right? Because I'm not doing this by accident. I want to do it so I can leave some sort of a lasting impression. Somehow, some way, I got attracted to the town of Vinton. I knew Vinton at a very small level through slight exposure through backing up that jurisdiction as far as calls for service. You got to remember I'm Northwest, so if I'm backing up Vinton, something incredible has happened that Northwest guys are going in there. And I took a liking to it. It was just one of those things that I liked it. Kind of did some research about them, the community aspects, the profile of the police department. And I do anything like I do everything really, and just dive in head first and just make those decisions and just go with it, good, bad, or indifferent. And decided to apply to the Vinton Police Department and be a part of that crew. And I remember when I was doing my oral board with the town of Vinton, they asked me, what do you aspire here in the Vinton Police Department? What do you want to do here? What is your goal, your end game? I said, I think I'll be the chief here one day. And
wow,
lofty
awesome,
goals, I guess,
man.
right? Accidents happen. Here I am today. But it's been a journey, like anybody else. You move another jurisdiction, you start over. Your seniority for whatever that is goes back to the beginning, and you kind of learn your way there. I'm very thankful for my time in Vinton. I couldn't think of another jurisdiction that I love serving for. I've enjoyed the process through it, the ebbs and flows in law enforcement. Everything's not sunshine and rainbows, and you go through challenges like anybody else, and you go through your own personal challenges with career. Or everybody says that 5 years you're going to hit a wall and kind of figure out whether you're in or out, if you're going to stay or not. And you'll do that again at 10 years. And I hit those walls trying to figure out whether I was going to stay in law enforcement, because law enforcement changes. It's going to change. And I'm not saying you're going to have to change with it, but you're certainly going to have to learn and how to navigate those waters. Change can be good. You just have to learn how to do it moderately and do it with some patience and not think that everything is bad. Change doesn't have to be a negative.
That's such a good word, because we get the chance to serve a lot of different agencies and stuff like that. And when we hear people talk about that, right, because we hear that a lot about how it's changing. We talk to guys that have been around for 20 or 25 years, and then even guys that have been around for 5 years will say how much has changed in the amount of time that they've been there. And then trying to figure out, like you said, I love how you said you had to figure out how to navigate those waters of change, because the reality is everything in the world is changing, but goodness sakes, the world of law enforcement has changed a lot over the time.
Everything changes. People change. Your priorities change. Fabricio, when he was a single guy, to now a married 43-year-old, this is two different people, luckily through growth and maturity. But everybody changes. And the thing about change is everybody hates change, but they also hate the way things are. And they say that's the key to leadership, right? Once you figure out how to navigate that, you'll be the most effective leader, and somebody I'd love to learn from is understanding that.
Yeah.
That is
And
what
I don't think folks hate the change. It's the fear of change, right?
Yeah.
The fear of an unknown.
Sure.
And how you succeed in that is really through effective implementation and communication. Is kind of slowing it down. This is how we're doing it, instead of just running and gunning and be like, we're going to do this. People will be very hesitant.
Wow.
I think we found out with officers that they hate things that stay the same, and then they hate when those things change. So you're correct. A good leader navigates that landmine there.
And it's always going to be the case,
Yep.
Especially now, emerging technologies, right? You have access to all the software and technology. You kind of have to figure out whether, is this good for my community? Is this good for our operations? Because there's a lot of money to be spent out there on things that supposedly improve law enforcement. But my belief is that you're never going to remove the human component and invest heavily on your personnel, because there's no software out there that could ever replace it.
I saw Richard Branson. He's the founder and owner of Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Mobile,
Yes.
all that. And he has motto, and apparently they have it posted everywhere in every building that they have. It says, train everybody so well they can go anywhere, but treat everybody so well they'll never want to leave.
That's awesome.
You know, and so I was reading an article about that, and it says like Harvard Business School uses that in their business classes and to teach and that kind of thing. So you train everybody that literally they could take advantage of any opportunity that comes their way, but they're not going to want to because they're so well treated where they're at that they're just going to keep growing and keep busting the seams for where they're at the place where they're at now.
Yeah, actually, Southwest Airlines adopted that model as well. The only reason I know that's because I studied a lot of self-development. Guys like Simon Sinek talked about Southwest Airlines and their motto as far as why they're at the time why they're such a successful airline, and why others are struggling is because they invested heavily on their people. I
think the statistic was 30 years in a row they made a profit.
Yep,
including 9/11.
Wow.
Yep. And what other airlines, bankruptcy and having mergers, and Southwest Airlines thriving because they focused on people.
Yeah. So, correct me if I'm wrong. I was trying to do the math in my head. You now have 19 years in law enforcement. Is that correct?
Correct.
3 years at the city, and you've been at 16 years at Vinton.
Correct.
So you've seen a lot of the change. You've been a part of a lot of change. You've experienced a lot of change. From Fabricio Drumond, that was the patrol officer just coming out of the academy, all the way now to Chief Fabricio Drumond. How has your perspective changed in that time?
If you ask me at a young age, probably not much, but really it has changed tremendously. My view when I was a young guy, it's a very narrow view because of what you're exposed to, your calls for service, the things that you're in control of, right? The dispatch calls you're going to and the interactions that you're having. So you have a very small, limited window of what you're seeing. You kind of know 1% of what's going on, of the totality of it. But you make these assumptions that you could, you see your chiefs back then or your lieutenants, captains, whatever, and you're like, I could do that job and I could do it better. At least that was my mentality. But really looking back, it's like you didn't have any of that. You have no information as far as how this thing is actually ran. And, looking back now at it, where you're responsible for policy, you're responsible for budget and implementation, and more importantly, you're responsible for people, right? You're kind of like the captain of the ship, and you're navigating it, and like there's an iceberg over there. We need a direct course. So you're that guy that's trying to avoid calamity at any level, and it's a very different perspective. And kind of going back to my young days where I used to think that I could just do it all and run departments and just do it easy, and I had no idea what it was going to be like. It's a lot of just I don't know how to say it. It's just a lot of shifting priorities. And you kind of have to pick a direction and make it effective, because there are consequences and repercussions to your decisions.
Yeah. Sounds like you've learned how to juggle well. So there's a lot of responsibilities that a Zone 4 officer has. You got to juggle that and be able to get home. And as a chief, you have to juggle those things well. But it sounds like there's a growing wisdom that you've acquired through scars and wounds and experience. And then intentionality. As a chief, you have to be extremely intentional with everything you invest in. And what's cool to hear is that as a chief, that you have chose intentionally to invest in your people. Mm-hmm. You can invest in a lot of things, and there is a lot of cool technology. I love technology, and I love the advancements, but your people are what you chose to invest in.
Oh, yeah, it's very easy, right, to get attracted to the shiny toys, but it's really people that make the organization. And for me, it's a blessing here in the Roanoke Valley, good mentors, good role models, good chiefs around that we can have conversations I can bounce ideas off of. I never pretend to know the answers to everything, nor will I ever. I make mistakes like the best of them. And the beauty of it is you can own that mistake. It's a teachable moment, right? We only learn from our mistakes. If you're winning and succeeding, there's not much to learn there except celebration. And luckily for me, I can make a mistake like the best of them, but I can take ownership of it and direct course and change actions and tell officers, here's where I messed up and here's where we're going to take corrective action.
It's such a good word. I had just in recent weeks, recent days, I've had conversations with a couple of young officers, a couple of young people just getting into law enforcement, and they were really struggling because, they felt like they had failed at something, or maybe they were not getting things as quickly as they thought they might and that kind of thing. And they were really struggling with this and really beating themselves up. To this point in their lives, things have been pretty easy for them. They've been able to like cruise through academically. They've been able to even athletically do well and all that kind of thing. And so all of a sudden they're not getting things quite as quickly, or maybe they feel like they're failing at something and they're like, what do I do with this? Like, and I just, just trying to speak into them, like, this is a great opportunity for you to grow. It's through failing, it's through not getting it that you have this great opportunity to make an incredible step forward. Don't look at this as a negative, make it a positive. And you have clearly taken that approach. That's cool.
Yep, growth is it's an incredible thing, and it usually comes as a result of a difficult challenge or a difficult moment in your life that you persevere through. And when you look back on it, you'll say, well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Yeah. A lot of things tend to work itself out, and we tend to worry about it way too much. And as I get older in life, I start kind of grounding myself with that. I'll be like, it'll be all right. Take a deep breath. We'll get through this thing. And usually we get through it together.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, as a part of that growth, one of the things that happens that we all know that does happen is it develops things within us as we go through the growth. So that means through the good things that we grow in and through the very challenging things. But Chief, we're curious to know, as you've experienced that growth, what things have become passions for you? What are the things that make you tick? What are the things that really get you grounded? What are some of those things?
We were talking about this personality earlier and talking about who we are. And I told you guys I'm a high I with a D, right? So influential. So I very much like to live in the clouds and have great ideas. My job is really to keep pushing forward, right? To move forward, continue growing the department. By growth, I mean just continue transitioning forward, answering to the community's needs, answering to the officers' needs, and of course, working with those external relationships. Is how do I keep this proverbial ball going forward and doing it while having those budget constraints in mind and while having policy in mind and of course, the well-being of the officers. So it's a juggling act to keep moving forward and addressing needs, whether that's a crime issue or a homelessness issue or a mental health issue. You got to prioritize, and you only have limited resources. So you really have to do some deep diving into what you want to tackle first and keep pushing forward.
That's that intentionality again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've heard you say it over and over again that the things you're passionate about, they get you out of bed. They're exciting, but you have to intentionally invest in them. That's pretty cool.
Just from some other conversation we were having earlier, it was really interesting for me to hear how important it is. You had mentioned the different things as far as fitness, and I think you had 4 different aspects of what you really see as being important that you'd like to instill in your officers, and kind of your approach to officer wellness. Could you hit on that a little bit?
Yes, sir. I have 4 core principles. They're your faith, your family, your fitness, and your finance. I see it as like a chair with 4 legs. And if one of those chairs are missing or wobbly, you're going to have those speed wobbles, right? You're not going to be able to move effectively through life if one of those things are absent. So my perception, at least, or my take and my responsibilities is to create resiliency, and how we can achieve that is by addressing your faith, your family, your fitness, and your finance, and start making that resilient officer, because that's what we're all about. Is we're in a job that's extremely tough, extremely demanding. So how can we get those core things dialed in and really fundamental into your life so you can apply it within your department and of course within your community?
Well, if we could hit on that maybe, if we're starting with the finance, because all of those are important, and you're sitting with 3 chaplains, so we naturally gravitate to faith, and we would absolutely want to touch on that. But if we start with the financial end of things, I'm sure you've seen the same thing that we have seen as chaplains serving law enforcement for years. We see officers oftentimes either while they're in the academy still or right after they get out, make some financial decisions that really end up crippling them and crushing them. They don't realize just how suffocating it is to be in that much debt, but they'll go out and get that big truck and you know, they're spending 60, 70 grand on a truck, and it's like, maybe on that starting salary, a $70,000 truck is not what you need right now. So,
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I don't think there's ever a point in time, at least in my life, where maybe spending 70, 80, 90 grand on a vehicle is a good idea. But everybody's different. Priorities are different. I think, it goes back to even educational days in school. You're really not taught how to invest, or what money is, and how you make it grow, and how do you invest, how do you save, and even in your employment, you can argue that your employer doesn't really have a role in it, right? The employer has a role to take care of you and pay you money for the service that you agree to. I think it's a core subject, as I mentioned, as far as officer resiliency, where we have those conversations with officers in training about investing, about, really stripping down your life to the basic needs, understanding what those are, and then working off those numbers. And if there's extras there, and putting it in certain accounts, or using your retirement account, start thinking of the long game, or the rainy day, or medical issues. Because, something like medical issues, if you don't make your health a priority today, it's going to be a priority one way or another in this life.
Absolutely.
So it's probably in your best interest to start taking care of it on the front end before life gets a hold of you and it makes a priority for you. By then it may be too late. So it's kind of setting up the finance has that relationship with everything, where you have to be ready for these moments. You have to be waiting for a disaster, or just really preparing yourself for a successful future. And that could be saving up for that truck. If you really want it, work hard for it, save for that, instead of getting into a massive debt. We live in quite challenging times where things are very expensive. And a lot of us are exceptionally well at kind of spreading ourselves thin as far as the financial part. And I'm hoping for the best, and I'm hoping to get that on the front end, where we can have the conversations with officers about their financial and where they're at in their lives, whether it's from an officer to a chief, and figuring out what's the game plan here when you hang up the uniform, and did you position yourself off to the best outcome possible.
Well, you mentioned family as another one of those legs of the chair. That's so important. And they're all connected, right?
Yep,
so
there's a marriage.
You get that person who they go out and get that vehicle that maybe is a little bit more than they probably should have bitten off. Now all of a sudden they're working overtime, every chance they get. They're burning the candle at both ends, trying to make all their payments and all that kind of thing. And if they have that spouse, or if they have children and that kind of thing, well, where are they? They don't see them, because they're doing all this extra work to try to pay for something that maybe they didn't have to have.
Everything,
so it's all connected, right?
Everything certainly has a consequence. You have work-life balance. I don't really believe in that set. I think there's work-life choices, and you make that choice, and there are consequences. If you decide that you're going to pick up a bunch of shifts overtime because you really think the important priority in your life is to buy a boat, a jet ski, or a car, great. There's a consequence to that. If you have a family and kids and obligations that are still waiting for you, I don't really ever think that you can achieve a balance in life. I think you just have to make deliberate, beautiful choices, and there's certainly a consequence to it when it's not the greatest choice. The good thing is you can always course correct, of course.
Yeah. I was listening to a finance guy one time, and he said, I don't care if you're on salary, it's maybe a little bit more challenging, but if you're on hourly, it's very easy. He said, I want you to figure out what an hour of your time is worth. Mm-hmm. He said, and then think about the things where you spend your money. He said, so whether you eat out, maybe the majority of your budget is going out to eat, or maybe you want to buy a boat. He said, how many hours of your time is that going to take how many hours are going to be taken away for you to be able to do those things? He said, so then what I want you to do on the flip side of that is he said, I want you to put a value on what your time with your family is. And so he sat there, and it just got dead quiet. And he was like, can anybody come with a number? And nobody raised their hand. He's like, because it's invaluable, right? He said, so how many of your hours are you sacrificing over here for the things that you want versus the amount of hours that you're sacrificing over here that you're saying there's not a money value that you can put on it? He said, we've all got to work. We've got to have a home. We've got to have food on the table. But at the end of the day, this stuff over here is worth this amount of money. But you're saying this over here is invaluable, but we're working like this over here is invaluable. And it was a pretty sobering moment.
Absolutely.
When he started talking about that.
You can't take it with you.
Nope.
Can't take any of it. There's not going to be a U-Haul behind your hearse. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Speaking
make
of
a priority.
hearses, let's talk about faith. There's going to be an eternity, right?
Yes, sir.
And oftentimes we find that people will typically shy away from that pillar or that foundation, and we try to be a little bit pluralistic or act like it's not there. But the reality is we want all officers in America to have a strong moral compass. We're depending on them in really dark environments to be able to navigate things with integrity, with professionalism. We have to have them to have a good moral compass. And if we do not have a faith that is functioning on all cylinders, that's not a reality. Oftentimes people went to a class recently, and it's a pretty significant class, and they just breezed over that. They were going to hit this topic on faith, and they said, well, this isn't really important to me. There's those of us in this room that it's important to maybe talk to them. But let's go to the next topic. And I thought, man, like I know that you're uncomfortable with this, but that is such a crucial thing.
Mm-hmm.
As a chief, talk to me about that.
Faith is incredible. It's the number one pillar. That's why I always say first, faith is number one. In my case, it's my love and passion for Jesus Christ. That is my pillar and my love. It grounds me into living with purpose. And every day, for me, it's basically a conversation with myself saying, how can I live for His will and not my own will? You know, how can I do these things right in my life? And it doesn't have to be big things. It's just doing the right things. It's unloading the dishwasher so my wife doesn't have to. It's picking up the coat hanger from the floor that I ripped away with my shirt. Or, you know, you're getting that drink from the refrigerator with the ice cubes and it falls on the floor. It's not punting it underneath the fridge and actually throwing it in the sink. It's being intentional and being a good person that keeps me grounded, making the bed. It's understanding that when the cash and prizes are coming in, that I don't forget that it's all as a result of God's grace. Because, you know, that's my inclination is when everything is good, I forget to pray to God and thank God for those. But when things are happening negatively in my life, He's the first person that I turn to and drop to a knee in the side of my bed and pray for guidance and forgiveness. You know, so for me, it's a daily thing where I still work on that. I haven't achieved it every day, where I constantly stay in communication with God and thank Him for every blessings that I have, because my inclination is that, right? When the good things are coming in, you know, you pray to God, please fix my problems and help me and navigate through this. And somehow you get through it through God's grace. And then you say, thanks God, I got it from here. And you grab the wheel of the car, only to drive it off a cliff again and come back and ask God for forgiveness and blessings. What I try to do is thank God for all the good things that are in my life. And of course, even the bad things, and ask for guidance, is understanding that He's always walking with me, whether it's in front of me, behind me, or next to me. He's always present with me. And it helps me with my struggles as a chief, right? As they say, it can be lonely, I guess, at the top. Mm-hmm. So I need a lot of guidance and I need a lot of people to talk to. And one of those defining moments for me is, of course, talking to Jesus Himself. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, that's so refreshing to hear you say that, because I'm thinking about, I had a seminary professor one time. He said, when you become a believer, you put on a pair of glasses. He said, because before you were just looking at the world through your eyes, but then when you come to know Jesus, you put on this pair of glasses and all of a sudden you're looking through it with His eyes. Mm-hmm. And so you see things differently and you do things differently because of how you see it. And I love thinking about somebody like you, Chief, you're the head of your department and you're coming in every day and you're putting on those glasses and you're saying, this is what the Lord would want me to do. And this is how I see that officer. Not just an officer. That's a man, that's a husband, that's a father. And I want him to be a good husband and a good father. And I want to invest in him. I'm just thinking, man, what a game changer that is for a police department.
Yeah, even for the position that I hold today, of course, as the chief of police, when that opportunity came, I struggled with whether I wanted to pursue that or not, whether I was ready, right? Self-doubt. And because I wanted to make the department proud, the people proud, the community, I wanted to succeed. So, and, you're kind of getting crippled by decision making. And for me, it was really just submitting and just letting God decide and let him speak to my heart. And ultimately, of course, I'm here today as a result of it. Still trying to navigate and figure things out. We're all defective by design. God made us in his image, made us perfect, and within a couple chapters, we ruined everything. So
that's good theology, right there.
That's how I tell people in the basic levels. Like, we had it really good. We started off great until we messed it all up, and it was very quick. We didn't even make it out of the first book.
Yeah. We all have scars and wounds on our lives now because of that.
Yeah.
We're broken. We come into this world. We're not born good. We're not born as a blank sheet of paper. Tabula rasa is the term. We're born evil. And this is why we have to have men and women who stand up for truth and justice. And oftentimes our law enforcement get to bear the brunt of that brokenness. So it's cool, again, to have that moral compass sitting at the head of an agency. And it was cool. Some of the conversations we'll leave between us, but it was cool to hear you talk about how you navigate that relationship with your officers and the gentleness you have, as well as the openness of, hey, I am a believer, and if you want to talk, here's where we sit to do that.
Absolutely. It's really just trying to live a life. It's like, how do I live a life that is not pleasure-seeking, but purpose-driven? And of course, that's a challenge every day, buying things, spending money on $10 coffees that are going to accumulate, like live with a purpose, live a meaningful life, strip the house down to the studs, less is more, like make things very basic in your life and you'll succeed quite a bit.
Yeah. Awesome.
And there's one more we haven't discussed, and you were talking about taking control of your health now because it's going to become a priority later. If it's not now, you talk about fitness, and taking care of that, as a part of that.
Chief, I know you're sitting at this table with the three of us, and you're going,
Studs.
do I even need to hit on fitness? I'm looking at our physiques. You probably ought to spend a little bit of time talking on this. I'll speak for myself. I probably have some. I need to be reminded of a few things. So you hit us. You say you've fallen for some sales pitches and that kind of thing. Go ahead and hit me with your sales pitch on this fitness front here so I can maybe buy into this.
Fitness is incredibly important. Whether it's in this profession or any profession, you have got to take care of this body. We invest in everything that we do in our life, in our houses, our families, our kids, but we always fall apart investing in ourselves as far as taking care of our needs, whether that's our spiritual fitness or even our health, right? It's, what we consume, understanding what we're consuming and what products are out there and what they do for you, understanding what you're deficient in. And in law enforcement, we do very good on the front end with fitness, right, in the basic academy and creating those standards, and hopefully that catches on through your career. But as you would have it, life shifts and priorities shift, family obligations come, and before you know it, your own health, the body that God's given you, you're mistreating it and you're not even knowing that you're doing it. Whether that's because you're a police officer and you're sitting in a sedentary position a lot with a lot of abnormal weight that you're just not designed to carry, or all the stressors that just the calls for service take on you.
You just looked at me when you talked about this. All this.
Yeah, I need to look around the room. I need a shift.
Yeah. I tell you, I have seen some pictures of Chief and some of the. He does CrossFit. And he does. One of his officers is a good friend of mine, and I know that they do CrossFit together. And I've seen recently the Murph challenge that you guys did. That's a big thing. You guys do that as a department. Hey,
that's not me. So I wish that was me.
That's Jake. That's my friend Jake.
Yeah,
so
that
he's a monster.
Stud. He's doing pull-ups with a weighted vest, like a 50-pound weighted vest.
He's a monster.
It's an inspiration, right? It's contagious. Positivity is contagious, and seeing officers do that, I want to do it too. And for us, I know that if you dial it in, if you dial in your fitness, you dial in your routines, you're going to be that much happier with yourself. Because you have a lot of unwanted, maybe weight that you want to lose, or maybe weight that you want to gain. And it's just a matter of finding out how you do that healthy. My goal with fitness is not to create a bunch of superstars that are, fitness models and bodybuilders. My goal is just to achieve a holistic fitness goal where people can identify foods, understand what the consumption of carbohydrates, proteins are important to you, micronutrients, and the times that you're consuming foods. There's workarounds when you're on night shift. and how you can disrupt your sleeping patterns by loading up on carbohydrates at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're not going to sleep so great because your body's processing that food while you're trying to get some good sleep.
You know, it's so important, the things that you were bringing up, and as we were discussing earlier before we started this episode, you know, statistically, depending on the study you're looking at, you know, the average age that an officer leaves this world, if they spend a career in law enforcement, is 56, 57 nationally, and even less in Virginia. And, you know, we have seen that played out in the departments we serve, where guys in their 40s, guys in their 30s are having cardiac events, strokes. They are, guys will retire, and within a year or two, they're gone from us. And so all of these things are important, but the fitness obviously is one of those things that we have to take. If we take care of ourselves along the way, all the way through, then whenever that time comes, we decide to walk away from this career, whether it's after 10 years or we see it all the way through to retirement, then we're still around for the people, that family that is so important, that spouse, those kids, those maybe grandkids one day. And so I'm glad you put an emphasis on that.
And that's just it, right? A lot of people with kids will tell you that I'll do anything for my kids. I'll do absolutely anything for my kids. And I'll usually say, well, how about you live for them? You know, meaning take care of yourself, even when you're not having the heart disease or massive health issues. You see a lot of officers with just mobility issues because they may be working out, but they're working out the pretty muscles, right? The chest, the bis, the tris, and they're not working on the mobility, the back, the glutes, your inner core. Like, you got to take care of those functional muscles, because that's what your body needs when you're putting on that duty belt and your vest and sitting in the car for prolonged times. And of course, your cardiovascular health, because we talked about earlier about calls for service and how officers, you know, can go from 0 to 100 and then back down. That does an incredible amount of stress into your body, and you got to be able to identify that and have to have some level of fitness to be able to combat that.
Well, and Scripture tells us in 1 Timothy 4 that, you know, that physical training is of some value. That godliness has value into all things, right? And so, yes, faith is important, and as chaplains, we would certainly say that as well. But physical training is important. It's not like we get to focus just on our faith. In fact, because of our faith, we do want to take care of this temple. We do want to take care of this body that God has allowed us to have. And as we've discussed on here before, hitting on these issues, you know, the better condition we are in physically, the longer we can serve, the longer we can serve these officers that we care about. And so very good.
Yeah, not every workout. It doesn't have to be barn burner workouts. You don't have to go hard in the paint. It's just a matter of dialing things in and working out 3 days a week, watching what you eat. You know, you can have those cheat meals. They're not cheat days, they're cheat meals. There's one meal. But that's why it fell apart.
Yeah. Okay, now I got it.
Yeah, you know, earn those meals.
Yeah.
But it's like cheat day, going hard from morning
Cheat
to dark.
weekend, cheat vacation.
Yeah.
So, Chief, let me ask you, on the outside, on the human side of things, when people look at guys like you and the other chiefs in our jurisdictions that we serve, and also people who may be listening that don't live in our area, but when they look on at Chief, they see things like the nice office, the Eagles, the nice car that you get. But what is the true reality of being Chief? What's the tough part of being Chief? There are obviously some good things that come with that, but what is it? Where is the tough part of being the chief?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The on the surface, those perks are very nice. You know, driving a nicer vehicle, having your own office, Eagles on your collar that are very nice. The true hard part about being the chief is the weight of responsibility, right? You're responsible for the decisions. Those decisions have an impact. They affect others. And they often affect others differently. So it's not like a one size fits all. Everybody's just going to be angry. Some people may buy in, some people may be angry, some are confused. And it's just a completely different way of looking at things, and having to be able to communicate with each individual and make them understand where you're at, and why you made those decisions. So yeah, knowing every decision makes those effects really is tough. And of course, within that is you have to continue with the community trust and the service that you provide for them, and make sure that they have a belief that your law enforcement is here for the good and for the positive, and we want to be a partner with the community. We're not going against you, because when you look at things on the national level, sometimes that works against us.
Yeah, it's to have that weight of responsibility of not only caring for the individuals that are serving your department, but now there's people with the town of Vinton that are, if there's something that goes awry, or if there's something that, okay, why did you make this decision? You have people you have to answer to as well. You've got to stand in front of, and not just the people that are in-house in your department.
And they're shifting priorities. Their priorities might be different than mine, different than the officers, and then you have to figure out where the middle is.
It's a lot. I do not envy people at your level in the department. The weight of responsibility is great. Can be, and it's why we pray for you, frankly.
I appreciate it. It can certainly be isolating. It's sort of one of those things where those decisions, it doesn't just shut off at 5 p.m. You go home thinking about it. Yeah. You don't sleep. It never really leaves you, even when you go home or with your family, because you're inherently responsible for the care of a 24/7 operation. So it never shuts off. I try to figure that out. There is no figuring it out. At least if somebody knows, I hope they teach me how. But it really never shuts off your decision making. It creates decision making fatigue.
In talking to chiefs, and again, privilege, we get to serve several different departments and kind of across the state. Interacting with leadership, one of the things that we often hear is that 24/7 wait. I don't have the Eagles on right now. I don't have the badge and gun, but there are men and women that are carrying their badge and gun, and they're going to make decisions that will impact our community forever. That's a weight that I don't know that you can truly quantify. So it's cool to hear that you invest in your people.
At the end of the day, it's a weight because you care, right? You care for their well-being, and it never shuts off. It's like caring for your children, your love, right? The thin blue line, as they say, the law enforcement family, and you care about your family. You want them to succeed, and you don't like it when they're hurt, sad, or don't enjoy working for your agency, whatever that may be. Those things affect you.
Yep.
So let's put a two-sided coin on the table as a part of that, and we're going to ask a two-part question for you. The first one is, after talking about these things, is the hard parts of being the chief. What are some of your greatest moments as chief, and then what are some of your greatest challenges you face as a chief?
Great questions. Greatest challenge is balancing competing priorities. Supporting your officers and staff while also meeting the obligations and evolving expectations of maybe your elected officials, community demands, local government, or even meeting something like accreditation standards. In the beginning of my career, I started learning about accreditation, of course, when I became an executive officer and understanding the importance of it. And those things can be very stressful, especially how the accreditation is set up. It often feels like you're walking a tightrope, and all these shifting priorities are kind of pushing you one way and the other, and you got to keep pushing forward. That's the biggest challenge. And of course, a challenge that many chiefs will tell you is always recruiting and retention. How do you recruit candidates that fit your community, not just bodies? You want people that are going to fit your culture. And essentially the culture of the police department is what resembles a reflective of your community. So how do you find those good candidates that are going to not only match that and stay and be effective community caretakers? It's been challenging over the years. It's starting to get a lot better, but the past few years was extremely challenging, especially when we're all in the same boat trying to get these officers on the road and certified, which takes a while to do. So extremely challenging, but comes with patience. One officer once told me, a former officer, retired now, told me, never hire out of desperation, always be patient. And I've always lived through that. You'll see some applications come in and this might be good, and the background investigation comes and it turns out not so great. You have an inherent responsibility to, pass on that applicant and not just put a body on the road, because it can have absolutely catastrophic effects on both your community and department. So myself and my department kind of have this rule where we prefer being short-staffed than to hire out of desperation and just have bodies on the road.
I had a previous chief that retired from one of the departments we serve, and he said to me one time, he said, I can train anybody to be a police officer, but I can't train people to be good people. He said, so we're looking for good people that we can train to be police officers.
We can't hire a character. It has to be good. We can train them. We just can't change their character, who they are. And some of the greatest moments really is the same thing. It is navigating through those challenging times, whether it was through pandemics or recruiting challenges or national sentiments that leak into the Roanoke Valley and create sort of this perception of law enforcement that your community is not a part of, but the officers still feel that. So how do you navigate them and try to tell them and influence them that's not how things are in the Roanoke Valley or in the town of Vinton? Don't buy into this national narrative because it's not occurring here. And really, it's just it's fulfilling because you come out stronger in the end when you have these challenges. So that's really my reward, is like when it's really struggling, when things are really difficult and you come out of it, be like, that was good. I did, give yourself a pat on the back and then move on to the next one, next challenge.
Yeah. Well, I want to finish up with one more question, Chief, and it goes back to something you said very early on in this episode. You said when you were being interviewed in 2009 to come to Vinton, they said, well, what do you see as your future goals and aspirations? And you said, I think one day I could be chief here, So obviously you saw that in your crosshairs as a real possibility. What would you say to one of your officers if they came to you and said, hey, Chief, or if you interviewed a guy and he said to you, I think one day I could be chief of this place? What would you say to him?
Learn every part of the job. Be good at everything, or at least know a little bit about everything, at least the way I try to achieve it. And I know we're a chaplaincy group here, but the devil's in the details. And you got to learn everything and be effective. You can't just do the parts that you love the most. And that's what happens with a lot of police officers is they like a particular area and they hone in, become expert matters. And that's great. Just make sure that you can do other things. And because that will pay dividends when you start learning, as you start growing in law enforcement. Take every opportunity to work in different divisions if that affords you those opportunities. And second is invest in your leadership skills early. Developing your leadership skills, your ability to lead, influence, inspire others to take action. That starts at a very young age and it never ends. You don't go to one leadership school and boom, you're a leader. It's continuous repetition, mistakes, and going through training to learn how to effectively pay attention to your decisions, pay attention to the repercussions and the positives of those decisions, and be a lifelong learner. And obviously, the adage is stay hungry, stay competitive, work hard, continue to be a good police officer, a good partner with the community, and stay grounded in your values and the commitment that you've sworn to uphold.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing for people who are driven to not lose that drive, but also be patient for those opportunities.
That's a great point.
There's a balance there.
Great point.
And you never want to squelch that drive in somebody, but you also have, sometimes we've seen young officers like, man, I've been doing this 3 years. Why am I not at this level?
Yeah.
Right? Why didn't I get promoted? Like, hey, slow down a little bit. Maybe there's more to be learned,
And there's opportunities there because obviously we all want to grow. If we're on this planet, we all want to grow and achieve great things. And there will be moments where I know there's officers that are waiting for that next step and they're hungry for it. So I'll give them little exposures to difficult tasks or difficult things I'm doing.
Nice.
Call them like humbling moments. And I'll be like, what'd you think of that? Do you think you're ready for the next one? In the case that I have in my mind, they're like, no, I'm good where I'm at. Thank you. I was like, there's a lot of things you don't know, the unknowns, and you'll get there. It's just, you got to take time. This career is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Take time, learn, appreciate it, appreciate the relationships, appreciate where you're at in your career, and continue to grow slowly.
Right. Well, Chief, we want to say thank you so much for we know your schedule is hectic. We know you have a lot going on, and we're very grateful that you agreed to sit down and have this discussion with us. So thank you for taking time. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you all for having me.
Yeah,
Look forward to the next one.
That's right.
Yeah, well, we were definitely open that invitation back up to come back for round 2. So, and who knows what that may be about. So, but we're excited for people to get to know you, the other chiefs here in the Roanoke Valley, through this series we're doing right now. We're super excited for them to get to hear this and to get to experience, to learn about a little bit who you are and what makes you tick. And we're grateful now to be able to start stepping into the trenches with you guys at Vinton PD. We're super excited about all that's going to do in the future of that. So, well, guys, I guess that's going to be it for today. We'll be looking forward to the next episode. So we'll see you back again on the SHIELD Armory. Thanks for spending time today with us on the SHIELD Armory. We hope this episode brought encouragement, insight, and a reminder that you're not alone out there. Whether you're on the road, behind the desk, on dispatch, or at home, know that your service matters and you are seen. If this episode helped you in any way, share it with someone you feel it could be an encouragement to. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay safe, stay grounded, and as always, watch your six.